Welcome. Now we're going to talk about trig functions of any angle. So previously we've talked about dealing with 30 degree, 45 degree, and 60 degree angles a lot. But we're going to start looking at any type of angle. So the first thing we're going to discuss are angle rotations and degree measures. So an angle is the union of two rays with a common endpoint called a vertex. So if we think about a Cartesian plane, and we set this vertex to be at the origin, we'll have an initial side pointing out to the right on that positive x-axis. And considering this angle as a rotation, we'll have some theta. In this case, we have a positive rotation, which creates our terminal side, which is also, connected at that origin, creating this vertex. So right here, the point at the origin where the two rays have this common endpoint, this is our vertex. And so what we want to notice, this is a positive rotation. Positive rotations are going to come off of this positive x-axis, and they're going to go in a counter-clockwise direction. All right, so it's a positive counterclockwise rotation. So we measure angles in degrees and also radians. We'll talk more about that later. Thinking about angle rotations, I could have some angle that looks like this. And we're still considering that we have an initial side as well as a terminal side. But what we're going to want to start to think about is that these angles can have both a positive counterclockwise rotation versus a negative angle rotation, which is clockwise. We could have an angle that looks like this. And that could be considered a positive 360 degree angle. Or it could also be considered a zero angle. If we were to go in the opposite direction like this, that would be negative 360 degrees. One other way to think about, we can have a straight angle. So that straight angle might have a positive 180 degree measure, or it could have a negative 180 degree measure. So one thing we're noticing is that, I'm giving this angle two different measurements. And what we're determining here is that if two or more angles have that same terminal side, they can be considered coterminal. So an example of two coterminal angles. In this situation, I have a positive 90 degrees, or going in the other direction, we would have negative 270 degrees. So positive 90 and negative 270 are coterminal. Another situation we could have, maybe we have an angle that looks like this. Suppose that is a negative 30 degree angle. Well, if we wanted to think about that as a positive coterminal angle, that would be positive 330 degrees. All right, so this is, how we're going to be considering angles in this class. Every time we draw them, we're going to have that positive versus a negative rotation, and then we can have two or more coterminal angles. One thing that we might think about, if I was given negative 270 as an angle and I needed to work with it, I could convert it to positive 90, and that might make my calculations or my thought process easier. We have different types of angles. Angles can be classified by their measures. So we have right angles, which we've already discussed. Right angles always measure 90 degrees. Acute angles have been discussed. Acute angles fall between 0 and 90. So I think like a cute little teeny tiny angle. And then we have obtuse angles. Obtuse angles are between 90 and 180. They're big fat angles or obese angles. So obtuse, obese, acute, little teeny tiny angle. Mnemonic devices. And then we could have a straight angle, measures 180 degrees. Something you should recall from some previous geometry is that if two angles sum to 90 degrees, they're called complementary. Whereas if they sum to 180 degrees, they're called supplementary. So we see two pictures here. 10 and 80 are complementary angles. 45 and 135 are supplementary angles. So for our first example, let's find the complement and the supplement of 71.46. If we want to find the complement, we need to find the angle that we would sum with 71.46 degrees to get 90. Or rather, we could say 90 degrees minus 71.46 degrees, and that gives us 18.54 degrees. So that is the angle which complements 71.46. And the supplement, that's the angle that causes it to add up to 180. So we would say 180 minus 71.46, both in degrees. And subtracting that, that leaves me with 108.54. So this is a strategy that you may need to use throughout the semester. All right, and our last example here, if we have an angle measuring 81 degrees, in which quadrant does the terminal side fall? We're going to find two positive and two negative coterminal angles. So we have an angle measuring 81 degrees. So as we start to think about these angles as a rotation, we always start on our positive x-axis. Rotating around, we have 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, all the way back to 360 degrees. So we'll note we have quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4 here. So dealing with 81, we'll want to know in which quadrant it lies. So it's going to start on the positive x-axis, and rotating 81 degrees, we're going to be ending in quadrant 1. So this is a positive 81 degree rotation. So the given angle lies in quadrant 1. Now, a positive coterminal angle, that means we need to add a full rotation to what we're looking at. So we would be adding this full rotation. And that full rotation, a full circle, that's 360 degrees all the way around. So positive coterminal would be taking that 81 degrees and adding to it 360 degrees. That gives me 441 degrees. And I could add another rotation to that. I could say, oh, well, let's go around in a circle again in the positive direction. So that would be that 441 plus another 360. And that leaves me with 801. So here we have two positive coterminal angles. If I was working a problem and I had been given 801 as my degree measure, I would certainly subtract 360 from it twice to get a small positive 81 degree angle, which is coterminal. Similarly, if we want to find a negative coterminal angle, that would be taking that 81 degrees and subtracting 360. So removing a 360 from it, going in the other direction. So 81 degrees minus 360 degrees leaves us with negative 279. And I can do that one more time, subtract another 360. So negative 279 minus another 360 degrees leaves me with a negative 639 degrees. So you can see we have four angle measures listed here, and they all mean the same thing as an angle measure of 81. They're all going to put us in the same location. All right, so I'm going to stop this video, but we talked about angles as rotations. We talked about coterminal angles as well as complementary and supplementary angles.